Hello, welcome to the Culturingua Spring Parent Orientation. My name is Nadia Mavrakis.
And I'm Cindy Dorsey.
So we'll go ahead and get started. This meeting is being recorded, so if you do not consent to being recorded, please leave the meeting. Our agenda today is that I will give welcome and introductions, and then Cindy will go through our curriculum methodology. I will talk about what to expect this semester, and then what's next for my child. Okay, so firstly, I'd like to introduce myself. I am the CEO. My name is Nadia Mavrakis. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Culturingua, as well as one of our French teachers. I studied French for 10 years, including at HEC Paris, which is a business school near Versailles. I graduated from the University of Texas. I studied business strategy and finance, and I minored in French. And I also have a diploma of French business language from Le Chambre de Commerce et d'Industrie de Paris. Prior to my life at Culturingua, I worked for 9 years as a business strategy consultant in the energy industry.
And I'm the curriculum director at Culturingua. I've been a teacher for a very long time and filling several roles. Right now, I also am working with adult ESL students and also younger students with ESL. I have a master's degree in applied linguistics and TESOL. I've also taught Arabic to students, and I spent 6 years in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates, where I was working in a kindergarten school that had a dual language program for English and Arabic. I've also taught 4th grade, 3rd grade, and preschool program for children with disabilities.
Thanks, Cindy. Okay, so we will go over our vision and mission. Our vision is to prepare future generations for an increasingly globalized world through both language and culture. We feel that it is increasingly important for people to speak multiple languages, and the best time to start that is when children are young. And we wanted to make sure that those opportunities were available to the children of San Antonio. And our mission is to make learning languages fun and easy, and we teach creatively through song, dance, movement, art, cultural activities, and more. So our teaching staff for this semester, we're specifically talking about the students enrolled in our classes that are focused on the Cinderella theme during this orientation. So I am the French teacher. Paula Espinosa is our Spanish teacher for that class. She's been a lead Spanish teacher with us, as well as an assistant French teacher for previous classes. And also she was a Spanish and French teacher at the Universidad de Caldas in Colombia, where she's from. And she has her bachelor's from there in modern languages and literature. Also, our teaching director, who will be joining on select weeks, is named Miriam Hernandez. She has 24 years of experience teaching Spanish, high school Spanish here in San Antonio at all levels, including at the advanced placement level, and 12 of those years she was the chair of the World Languages Department across all languages. She's originally from Mexico and has her Bachelor of Arts in Spanish language and her Master's of Arts in Hispanic literature from UTSA. So I'll hand it over to Cindy now to talk about our curriculum methodology.
Right, so it's really important to us that we make learning languages fun, but also that we present it in a way that students are going to get a lot of practice and be able to grasp what we're doing in the short amount of time that we get to see them. One of the ways we do that is to use the gradual release of responsibility framework. And the graphic here on the screen will show you that that starts out with the teacher doing the action or presenting the information in a way that children can understand. We call that comprehensible input. The next thing we do is the guided instruction. This is where it's not the teacher doing it, it's all of us doing it together, the teacher with the students. At Culturingua, we call this the low stress output, because in this part of the lesson, the students are not going to feel like there's a spotlight on them, that they're being tested about what they're doing. We're all just practicing together. Then we go on to the next part, which is we all do it together, or you do it together without the teacher. This is the structured interaction. This is where we get the kids to be a bit more focused on what they're doing. We're going to ask them, do you want me to continue, or? Yeah?
Sure.
Okay.
Hi, Georgina. Welcome. We are just going through our teaching cycle. So maybe Cindy, do you want to start just at the beginning of this slide for her? Okay.
Sure. I'll go. So I was talking about.
Sorry, I was just asked Georgina, can you hear us? Can you type in the chat window?
I don't know. Maybe she's not.
Okay, let me just. Hi, Georgina, can you hear us? Hi, Georgina. Okay, let us know if you can hear us. Okay, we're gonna keep going, and if you can't hear us, let us know. Which I guess you won't know because you wouldn't have heard that question, but okay, we will keep going.
Okay, so I was talking about the way we present lessons at Culturingua, and that's based on this idea of the gradual release of responsibility. It's here on the screen that you can see, and this works from the teacher presenting ideas, course content, and it works down to the student being responsible for the course content. So we start with the teacher presenting, that's the I do it part, and the I is the teacher there, presenting the vocabulary, presenting the topics that we want to cover. And then we move into the we do it, and this is the low stress output part of our lesson. This is when the student and the teacher together are going to use the vocabulary in activities. And then we want to move it to where the teacher has less of a role and the students are going to be the ones that do it. But it's not an individual activity yet. This is a part where students aren't afraid to speak because they're not being singled out and required to perform. It's in it's still a very low stress environment, but we're asking now the students to be a little bit more interactive, a little bit more expressive. And then the last bit is the extension activities. This is where you do it alone. Now we're asking the student to show what they've learned. They're going to put what we've shown them into practice in an activity. So, an example of that. All right, so if we're looking at the Cinderella curriculum that we're using, an example of that would be for the comprehensible input. The teacher is going to teach all of the vocabulary, is going to introduce the characters, for example. In the first lesson, the characters have pictures on the sticks, and the teacher is going to introduce these characters and have the children say hello to them. And also, she's going to act out all of the chores for the children while she's teaching them the vocabulary that goes for the chores. That's the topic of the first lesson. Then she's going to ask the children to look at this list of chores that we've been talking about, and they're going to match a picture of the chore to the words that the teacher says. Or if the students are old enough to read, they can match the picture to the written words that show the chore. This is low stress. The kids are not having to really do a lot of speaking, but they are interacting with the vocabulary. In the structured interaction, the teacher is calling out the chores, or the students are calling out chores for each other, and they're acting them out together. And then we get to the extension activities, and this is where they focused on, during the lesson, they talked about counting from 1 to 6. So the students practice that. The students practice doing that by one of the chores was hanging clothes on the clothesline to dry. So each student would get to hang clothes on the clothesline, and they counted the number of articles of clothing that they placed on that clothesline, so to practice their numbers that way. All right, and so that leads to the students having lots of good practice with all of that vocabulary that we taught in the lesson. So another thing that is very important for our teachers to use is gestures. The teachers use gestures, and they expect the students to use and respond to these gestures. So an example of a gesture would be, and the teacher doesn't have to say in English, "I want to hear you talk." The teacher can say it in the target language, in this case in French or in Spanish, and she makes this gesture, and even if the students don't understand the language that she's using, they understand the gestures that she's using. And it really helps the kids to feel like the language is not going over their head, they're understanding. All right, this next slide is about the standards that our curriculum is based upon. So the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages is the respected authority in the United States for teaching languages. And we've looked at the standards from ACTFL, and we have chosen the objectives that we feel are appropriate for the age of the students that we're working with. And so we're asking these students to do things like be able to introduce themselves. We're asking them to be able to tell a little bit about themselves. We want them to be able to name some items. These are examples of things that we're doing in this level from ACTFL. So what that means is we are going to be looking at your child's progress along that scale from ACTFL, and we want to make sure that we can communicate with you the kind of progress that they're making based on the standards. So we're looking for, in the interpretive, what can they understand when they hear a conversation? For interpersonal, how can they talk to each other? Can they get information from what we're saying? Can they express the vocabulary that we've been talking about? These are objectives that we're going to pick out, and we want to share with you your child's progress. So we plan to give you a written report about the progress that your child made over the course of the semester by the end of the term. And the other thing that we want to do is get the kids and families involved in looking at their progress. And so we're developing a badge system where we will have the different objectives that we'd like the kids to be able to acquire over the course of the term. And as they meet those objectives, they're going to get a sticker to show that they've met that objective.
Okay, thanks, Cindy. So now I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail about what to expect from this semester. So we have on the slide here the 8 weeks of class that we have, and then which scenes from the story of Cinderella that we're going to be focusing on each week. And each one of those comes with a set of vocabulary and expressions that they're going to be focusing on, which we'll send home in the parent letters. But at a high level, this is the order. There are 10 scenes in the overall story, but there's only 8 classes, so we are not going to be focusing on scenes 4 and 5. But instead, we're incorporating the language objectives that are in those 2 scenes and in those 2 lessons into our other lessons. But you're welcome to review those lessons at home with your child on the Storybook app if you'd like. But this is how our semester will progress. And we will send home reminders with the parent letters about which areas you should focus on for the Storybook app. So, and that brings us to the next slide, which is how you can support your child at home. So you can review the vocabulary learned and use it in everyday settings with them. So we, as I said, we'll send those home with you. And then also you can read and listen to scenes from the Cinderella Storybook app. That are, and we ask that you do that in both English and in the target language. And if you don't speak the target language, then you can listen to the recitation of that scene using this button that says listen. And then you can also switch between English and the target language with this button in every page. This here at the bottom lists all 10 of the scenes. So if you want to just jump straight to one of the scenes, you can. And then within each scene, there's 6 to 8 pages. That, and in total, there's 51 pages across the 10 scenes. And you can switch to the next page number within a scene by clicking on this play button. And the instructions for that were sent previously for how to access the Storybook app, either through your computer or through a tablet or phone. But if you have questions, reach out to me. And then, as I mentioned, we'll send home this parent letter that will list out the thematic vocabulary that we focused on. So, for example, yesterday's lesson was the thematic vocabulary were the chores and then the numbers 1 through 6. But then we'll also list out functional vocabulary, which are words that we use in context with the students that they didn't necessarily learn, but they're going to move towards acquiring those words over the course of the semester. Because of how they're being used in class and how there's gestures associated with them, as Cindy explained. We'll also mention what the objectives are specifically, as Cindy mentioned, that are aligned to the ACTFL guidelines, the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages, and then again, how you can reinforce this at home. What's next? So, you know, being the proficiency journey for a foreign language is a journey. It's not overnight that they're going to be able to speak the target language. And so we ask that you become an advocate for your child progressing along their language proficiency journey and become aware of what it means to be proficient at various levels and what are those goals and how can you support them. And I'll say that this is the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages objectives and their proficiency scale, and having parents being involved in how students are progressing along the proficiency scale is what's used across the school districts in San Antonio. Cindy and I were just, and Miriam Hernandez, our teaching director, were just at a conference a few weeks ago for all foreign language educators in San Antonio, and we talked about those exact subjects and how NEISD, NISD, Alamo Heights ISD, SAISD, and others are implementing the same thing, but mostly at the high school level and some at the middle school level, whereas we are bringing that earlier in your child's academic career to the preschool and elementary levels, so you can start to get a head start before they get to middle school and high school. And then the other thing is to consider enrolling your child in a Culturingua class this summer. We are offering a number of classes in partnership with NEISD and NISD Community Education in Spanish, French, and Arabic for a number of ages. So the dates and times and locations are listed here. These will be updated on our website within the next week, and enrollment begins in early April. Enrollment will be directly through those 2 school districts' community education sites. And then we'll also publish our fall calendar for fall classes sometime in the summer. So with that, we will pause and see if there are any questions from any of the parents on the call. Do you have any questions? Okay, well, If you do have any questions, feel free to reach out. Cindy was CC'd on the welcome email that you received, and her email is in the parent letter that was sent home the first day, as well as you should all have my email and the teachers' emails and our teaching director. So feel free to reach out at any time if you have any questions, and we look forward to working with your student, with your child this semester. Thank you.